Good morning, and welcome back to the Daily Trucking Market Update podcast. I'm your host, Driven, and on this show, I dive into the markets to keep you truck drivers, you owner operators, up to date so you can best position your truck to make the most money. Now, I'll be using the DAT load board, and I appreciate them sponsoring this video. And in return, they've provided you with the link down in the description box for 10% off for your first 12 months, so check it out. Now, stick around. I got a dad joke to tell, and then we'll dive right in.
Rolling down the highway, sun just breaking through. Radio's playing loud, the show's for me and you. Learn how to book your loads and make that money flow. Keep the shiny side up wherever we go.
Now, all that I ask for the little chuckle, or maybe not, is to hit that like button and maybe consider subscribing if you get some value from this, or maybe just a laugh. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? I would appreciate it, since I always ask at the very end of the video. This time I'm going to ask towards the beginning. If you enjoy the videos, if you could help me out, give the video a like, as well as leave a comment down in the comment section. The comment is actually more important than the like. That'll help the algorithms get this content out to the people. Anyway, let's jump into the dad joke. I'm an expert at picking leaves and heating them in water. It's my specialty. All right. Let's see. Yep, I had a feeling. As I was clicking the button, I forgot that I did not. There we go. I didn't actually select where or what I wanted to show, but that's okay. It's fixed now. All right. So looking at the weather, you got that snow up there in the northwest. There's still some snow hanging out in Washington, northern Idaho, and kind of all over, a little spotty in Montana. So be careful if you're up there in the northwest. It's dumping some snow. You get some rain in North Dakota, northern Minnesota. I had to think for a second. Oh, where else? What is that? Illinois. That's Iowa. Sorry. Brain's not functioning yet. I'm still working on my first cup of coffee at the moment. And that's about it. A little bit in Missouri, but not a whole heck of a lot to speak of. Let's fast forward a little bit, see what's going on the rest of the day. It looks like even the snow up there is going to clear out a bit. But you got some rain up there in the Great Lakes states. Looks like Nebraska as well. But that's about it. Just keep an eye on that radar. You don't want any surprises. Nobody likes surprises, not when it comes to the weather, but especially if you're up there in the northwest. All right, so I like to start with the states. Looking at a generic overview of the states, what their load to truck ratios are. This will help us determine if the state is in okay shape. And then in a few minutes, we'll dive in and look at the individual markets. Now, the individual markets today are absolutely abysmal. It's the worst that I've seen it so far. So what that means is just production overall is a little down today. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have negotiating power in some of these states. So that's why we start here, because that helps us to determine if we have that negotiating power. And then we get to look at the heat map and break down and see where's our best shot to actually negotiate. So, yeah. All right. Alabama, 833 loads in, 307 loads out. I'm not going to say it's terrible because there's a bunch of states that are going to be terrible today. So I'm just not going to go there. If I don't say anything, obviously the numbers speak for themselves, right? Arkansas, 350 loads in to 568 loads out. So that's actually an increase for Arkansas. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, love to see that. We're not going to see a ton of increases today. I say that. Arizona increased 511 loads in to 611 loads out. That's interesting. It's almost like you have some negotiating power there, because the majority of the freight's always going to be in Phoenix, right? That's just Arizona. You don't have to look at Arizona to understand that. you might actually have a little bit of negotiating power. I don't think them brokers over there are going to be used to it though. So, good luck to you. I wish you the best. Always ask though. Always ask. California, 1,901 loads in, 3,032 loads out. Good shape for California. You got a lot of trucks headed back towards it. A lot of those California boys and girls, they run short hops. So they'll run like 1 day loads and then they'll run straight back, very regional area. So you got a lot of trucks headed back today. But despite that, you've got an increase in volume for loads. So definitely have negotiating power over there in California. Colorado, 626 loads in, 240 loads out. Connecticut, 279 loads in, 131 loads out. DC has 2 loads. Delaware, 53 loads in to 61 loads out. Florida, 3,189 loads to 390 loads out. Georgia, 2,349 loads in, 830 loads out. Iowa, 472 loads in to 750 loads out. Is the heat map lying to me? Because that is a massive increase in production. It is a little up as far as trucks going in, but not much, and a healthy increase on loads out. So certainly have negotiating power there in Iowa. We've had it for the past couple of weeks, but it's in really good shape right now. So get the money in Iowa for sure. Idaho, 109 loads in to 323 loads out. I'm going to refresh that heat map here in a minute because this is not the story that I expected to see. So for the first Northwest state, starting off good. Illinois, 1,325 loads in, 2,784 loads out. Excellent shape for Illinois. Definitely have negotiating power there. The surrounding states are in good shape. So yeah, love to see it. Indiana, 883 loads in, 1,652 loads out. So we got another increase here. Indiana in really good shape. Majority of that freight's going to be in the southern half in the Indianapolis market. So you've got some negotiating power over there. Kansas, 337 loads in, 501 loads out. Got a little separation there too in the driver's favor. So Kansas looking good. Kentucky, 743 loads in to 839 loads out. That heat map is turning me into a liar. Interesting. Yeah, Kentucky in good shape as well. You don't necessarily get a ton of negotiating power in Kentucky, but maybe a little bit. It's going to be hit or miss in Kentucky. Louisiana, 327 loads in, 346 loads out, still holding above that 50-50 mark, so that's good. Massachusetts, 494 loads in, 247 loads out. Maryland, 491 loads in, 447 loads out. It's normal for Maryland. Maine, 118 loads in to 120 out. Michigan, 693 loads in. Okay, that's a little bit of an increase to 1,022 loads out. So that about remained the same. Still in really good shape, though. You've got negotiating power there in Michigan, so use it. Minnesota, 504 loads in, 718 loads out. So it's remaining in good shape. Would like to see those two states progress like they normally do as the week goes on. They either remain strong or get stronger. So love to see that. Missouri, 746 loads in, 1,239 loads out. So yet again, we've got another increase. Mississippi, 362 loads in, 441 loads out. Good shape for Mississippi. Montana, 66 loads in, 128 out. North Carolina, 1,803 in, 665 loads out. That's a slide, unfortunately, for North Carolina. North Dakota, 73 loads in, 152 loads out. So good shape for North Dakota still. You have negotiating power up there. Nebraska, 237 loads in, 232 loads out. That's pretty good for Nebraska. New Hampshire, 149 loads in to 42 loads out. Jersey, 688 loads in, 1,322 loads out. So we got an increase in production for Jersey as well. Love to see it. This has been great so far. So I don't know what I was talking about at first. New Mexico, 160 loads in, 102 loads out. That's normal. Nevada, 197 loads in, 371 loads out. So still in really good shape for Nevada, but that has slid a little bit. That's probably due to the increase of trucks headed back into California. there's a product of those results right there. So it's still in good shape, but it did slide. It slid for us a little bit today, but still in good shape. I mean, you still have negotiating power there in Nevada. So New York, 891 loads in, 1,175 loads out. So New York in good shape. It just kind of remained the same. Maybe a slight increase in production, but not much to speak of. Ohio, 1,484 loads in, a lot of trucks headed there, to 1,978 loads out. So Ohio's still in good shape. If the western part of PA is below average, though, it's going to eat up some of that those Ohio loads, and it's going to take away some of your negotiating power up there in Ohio. So we kind of got to see the heat map in order to determine whether or not we have negotiating power in Ohio. So yeah, Oklahoma, 566 loads in to 306 loads out. That's an increase in production for Oklahoma, but doesn't do us any good, does it? Oregon, 208 loads in, 450 loads out. So I think that's a little bit of a slide in production there, but it's still in really good shape. I mean, you've got above 2-to-1 load to truck ratio. So you've got negotiating power there still, despite a bit of a slide. Pennsylvania, 1,671 loads in to 1,998 loads out. So you got a lot of trucks headed that way. Not the biggest number as far as freight goes. I think that's still about the same, though, as what we were. So, I mean, not a ton of negotiating power in Pennsylvania, but okay shape. I think it's going to depend on where that freight's located. If it's all located over in the Philly market, the Ohio market is going to get eaten up a little bit. Rhode Island, 81 loads in to 37 loads out. South Carolina, 929 loads in to 540 loads out. That's below par even for South Carolina. South Dakota, 101 loads in, 124 loads out. That's a pretty big increase in freight for South Dakota. They don't have a ton of freight. There's not a lot going on, and they're usually a lower production state. So that being said, you likely have negotiating power there in South Dakota if you can swing it. If not, if you're close to North Dakota, try to get up there. Or even Iowa. There's a ton going on in Iowa. Tennessee, 1,050 loads in, 856 loads out. That's just normal. Texas, 4,028 loads in, 2,621 loads out. Sad, but normal for Texas. Utah, 302 loads in, 356 loads out. So a bit of an increase for Utah, but not a lot to speak of there. Virginia, 914 loads in, 683 loads out. A bit of a slide for Virginia. Vermont, 55 loads in to 46 loads out. Washington, 303 loads in, 524 loads out. So Washington still in really good shape. Northwest still looking good. Not great, but it is looking good. You've got negotiating power up there, so get all the money. Wisconsin, an even further increase here. 681 loads in, 1,693 loads out. They need drivers. They are paying all the money right now. If you're not getting all the money in Wisconsin, you're doing something wrong. Plain and simple. As much as this number has been lopsided heavily, more than 2-to-1, sometimes it's been 3-to-1. For how long it has been, there is freight that is sitting there. There's freight that is sitting there. So Wisconsin, an excellent state to get your money. West Virginia, 107 loads in to 215 loads out. That's really good for West Virginia. Interesting. Wyoming, 56 loads in, 109 loads out. We will cover these really quickly. I covered these yesterday. These are the trend lines. This just kind of lets us know what's going on with the market overall. It's not going to give us a ton of insight, but it is good to know because as we have watched this over the past couple of months, it has helped us to understand which way the market is moving. The market is always moving. It's either moving up or it's moving down, kind of like the stock market. So it's going to be doing the same thing here because it's a zero sum. it's either the drivers have negotiating power or the brokers have negotiating power. And I mean, in all honesty, really, it's the shippers, but it's the brokers doing the bidding. Anyway, so it's always going to be up or it's always going to be down. This helps us to understand that. It has been up in an uptrend overall. Can't just look at day to day, overall over the past couple of weeks. So the overall spot load posts from last week to the week before, that's the first number, is up 16.1%. And then from September this year to September of last year, it's down 13.1%. The van load to truck ratio is up week over week to 19.5%, but year over year it's down 9.8%. Van spot rates are down 1.5%. We got to do a better job of negotiating there. But as far as year over year, it's the same as it was last year. And with a massive increase in production that we're seeing, there's no reason why it should be the same. Anyway, flatbed load to truck ratio, week over week, it's up 17.6%. But year over year, it's up even more, up to 28.2%. Despite that, week over week, the spot rates are up a measly 0.4%, and they're only up year over year 3.6%. Reefers, the load to truck ratio week over week, up 22.2%. I'm sure y'all are glad to see that. Year over year, it's down 1.9% though, and the spot rates week over week are down 0.9%, and year over year down 2.5%. The actual spot rates across the board. This month for vans, it's up 5 pennies from last month to 202. Flatbeds are up this month from last month to 5 pennies to 243. And reefers still remain the same at 238. Fuel, wow. Fuel has come down to $3.55 average across the nation, which is a drop of 2.2%. Interesting. And there it is. You see all that blue? Man, have mercy. It's a shock though, because I saw this. Obviously, I have to set up all these screens before I get going in the mornings. I looked at this, because I don't read the state level. There's just too much there. But this is easy to see, right? You see, this is all blue. There was a ton of red there yesterday, and now it's all blue. But they're not really coinciding. Like they're not lining up. So that's interesting. I'm not sure what's going on there. This is the worst that I've seen it. By far, it's not even close. Not even remotely close. So, there's just not a lot to speak of. I mean, up there, I'll just go over it quickly, I guess. Up there in the Northwest, you got your freight. It's going to be in Seattle or Portland. Get as close as you can to those markets. Down in LA, if you're in the middle or you're closer to kind of that San Francisco market, there might be some freight over there. The Los Angeles market, you can't go wrong with. That's where the majority of the freight's going to be. So, if you can help it, certainly get down there. Nevada, it's typically, shockingly, it's in the northern half of the state, not down there in Vegas. That being said, I mean, Vegas is Vegas. It's a large hub. So, you're going to have some freight there. In Arizona, it's good. The freight's certainly going to be located in Phoenix. In Texas, it looks like Dallas market is winning today. And I wound up checking a little bit later in the day yesterday I don't even know why, but I checked, and the Dallas market seems to be much, much stronger than the Houston market. It has a higher, well, actually, I do know why. It has a higher average pay rate coming out. So you might want to keep that in mind. Dallas market, if you can help it. Will that change? Sure. But I do think that that's pretty normal. Kind of thinking back, I was typically, if I was hauling generic freight, I typically got a better rate coming out of Dallas than I did Houston. So anyway, moving on. The freight kind of in the Southeast, it's going to be in Atlanta market or Memphis. Memphis, if you can help it, over Atlanta, certainly. You've got a lot of states around there just desperate for freight, and they're all going to gravitate towards Atlanta. In the Midwest, Indiana is winning that race, as well as Chicago, by far. But then you've got Iowa. In Indiana, it's the southern half of the state. Indianapolis market, Chicago, right? In Iowa, the majority of the freight looks to be in the middle of the state or the southeast corner. And I've seen it consistently enough where that southeast corner is usually just a hotter market than the rest of Iowa. So there must be a lot of production over there in the southeast market. I'm confident enough. I've seen it enough to say that that's where you should kind of aim if you're going to Iowa. But if you can't hit that southeast corner, then the middle of the state is a good area. Of course, right? I mean, the major interstates, you can't go too terribly wrong if you can keep it near the interstates. But I know sometimes we just can't help it, right? Looking at the Northeast, I mean, Pennsylvania's just showing horrendous. Ohio's doesn't look good at all. I mean, from what I'm seeing here, it doesn't look like you're going to have any negotiating power in Iowa or in Ohio today. Even the Philly market has cooled off compared to what it had been or has been. So that's a bit of a shock to see. Jersey, the freight's going to be in the northern half of the state. Looking up at the Great Lakes states, Michigan is actually showing that the freight's over there in Detroit. Now, given what I'm seeing for the rest of this map, I don't know if I would necessarily trust that. Because the majority of the freight is in the western half of Michigan. So I don't know. I don't know. Yes, you've got the car market over there in Detroit. So, you would think that there'd be a bunch of freight over there, but a lot of times that market is blue. It's not hot. And the western half of Michigan is hotter. So as far as negotiating power goes, probably better off in the western half of Michigan, especially if Ohio's not quite as good as it normally is. That Detroit market's going to wind up getting eaten up. So because the ones that are over in Indiana, they're just going to make the drive over to Chicago, as they should. But Ohio, especially in the western half, if the Detroit market is better than normal, that's where they're going to go. And then looking over at Wisconsin and Minnesota. Minnesota, it's going to be that southeast corner. That's the hottest market in Minnesota. And then Wisconsin is kind of that middle third. It's about, what is that, 120 miles north of Chicago-ish, something like that, maybe 150. The starting point I'm talking about. Anyway, that's where the freight's located. It's, like I said, it not much to look at on the heat map today. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I don't know if maybe something's broken in the code or what, because this just goes to show why you need to look at more than one data point, why you need to look at both. This is why I don't just use this, because you need to see the actual numbers, and that's why I go through every single state every single day. There are some states that I could weed out of that list, but to be fair, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to keep it as I've been doing it and just go down that list. I think that that's the best way to do it. But this is proof why you need more than one data point, because you need to know. And as you look at these every day, or hear about them every day, either way, however you're doing it, you're going to understand where the freight's located generally. And when technology is not working as it should, maybe it is working as it should. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it, though, with the numbers that we're seeing for the load to truck ratios. It doesn't quite seem like it. So, we can't necessarily rely on technology all the time. We got to use our brains sometimes, right? But anyway, that's the trucking market update for today. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, leave a like and a comment. Thank you so much. Y'all keep that shiny side up. As always, y'all stay driven. I'll see you tomorrow.